Greetings, it is I, Cantus Narvan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the various campaign settings of Dungeons & Dragons, most of which date back to, of course, AD&D, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. And where we began with Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in Space, Spelljammer. So, let's talk a little bit more about Spelljammer, about some more things you can get for your ship and crew today. So the first thing you could also get for your ship are anchors and tethers. Now you're saying to yourself, well, that seemed pretty obvious. But it doesn't necessarily seem obvious in space. Where are you anchoring to? What are you anchoring against? Anchors can allow you to attach to things like asteroids, other ships, or if you're in the docks, a number of anchors and tethers. All of these cases will help you from drifting. The movements of your ship and the movements of whatever you're trying to attach to may be different, just naturally. And you don't want to drift apart. That's their existence is there. The larger the ship will either need very large anchors / tethers, or just a lot of them. So you can see how they are important, but you might need a bunch of them. Now another thing is a lifeboat. It's a hard-shelled ship that's just made to go to the nearest gravity well. Now, this means you don't want to use a lifeboat near a sun, because then you're going to fall into a sun. But generally speaking, if you're using it near a planet, it will successfully make landfall like any other ship, but then it's done. It can't move anymore. It's just made to land you onto some kind of physical body where you'll theoretically be safe. Now, each ship has its own price based upon the size of it and the number of people it can take. If you're looking how much space it takes up on your ship, a lifeboat will have a amount of tonnage it will take up of your cargo equal to half the amount of crew it can carry. So if it can carry 20 people, 10 tons. Now there is alternate versions of these that are collapsible. Effectively, you can collapse them down into 1 ton of space each. These take 2d4 rounds to set up, and they cost 3 times the amount that they normally would for these lifeboats. But basically then, you could have a lifeboat that could get off the ship, and it takes up far less space. Now we've talked a lot about how important the captain of the ship is, how important the helmsman, especially, but guess what? There's the rest of a crew. And though that crew doesn't do a lot, they are indeed very important. They might not directly affect the maneuverability of the ship, but there are certain maneuvers that they are important to. Spinning, keeling, tacking, stopping. These are important things that a crew, using the various riggings and oars, will be critical to. So you can see how a useful crew can help add a lot of maneuvers and effective maneuverability to your ship, allowing it to act in ways that, without them, not nearly as effective. Crews come in 4 types. Well, each crew member comes in 4 types. Green, average, trained, and crack. Each of them is going to have a price per month that you're going to have to pay them in order for them to be on your ship. It is assumed by all of them that you are going to pay 2 months in advance before they get on board the ship. After that, whenever you make landfall anywhere, any promised payments that were part of the trip will be paid to them. If the trip is especially hazardous, then it will be assumed that a portion of the treasure or profit that is part of this hazardous journey will be promised to them, and they are expected to gain that portion once they arrive in wherever your final destination will be. This overall extra pay doesn't really affect the ability of any of these sailors, these crew. What it really affects is their morale in general. The more money they're getting also kind of keeps them into the job, so to say. So if you're going on something very hazardous, that's why money is a great motivator. So let's talk about each of these types of crew. A green crewmate, well, you can find one anywhere in space. There's someone with pretty much no sailing experience. Whether on a planet or in space, they have no idea what they're doing, really. They have no experience. There are an advantage because if you need a warm body to fill a space, guess what? They're right there, they're joining the crew, and they're willing to sign up. You can find these anywhere. People willing to sign up to travel with you and to work with you. Average, on the other hand, is still very common. Average, though, getting a full crew of them would require you to go to some actual bastion of civilization in space. Go to some kind of spaceport, a larger settlement. If you go to one of these places, if you spend a little time there, you could very easily get a crew of average participants. They've had a little bit of either space-based sailing experience or even groundling-based sailing experience, enough that they understand the mechanisms of the ship itself and can properly operate it just a little better than your green folks. Trained are just that, they're trained. Now, these aren't necessarily rare or uncommon. It's just the fact is you don't tend to find them in cities as much. They're out there. It's just the fact that most of the time they're on ships. So it's not like there aren't a lot of trained individuals out there. If I go to a major bastion of settlement, a city, some kind of settlement that's major bastion of civilizations, I can probably find about 3d10 trained fellows there that I can hire on for my ship. Now, you could always wait for another ship to come in, because guess what happens then? Most of the time there are people that leave that ship, switch out, maybe they got fed up, left, maybe their time on board, their contracts are done. So new ships arriving might mean new trained crew members within the pool that you can possibly hire on. Now, a crack crew member, it's not particularly rare, but it's special. A crack crew member is crack with a particular captain and a particular ship. They are unique to that. If I move that crack crew member from that captain and ship, put them on another ship or with another captain, guess what? They're only trained now. They effectively have learned, a crack crew member has learned all the tips, all the special tricks, all the techniques that are required by this certain ship with this certain captain in order to run smoothly. That's all it is they're specifically trained under someone and on a ship to make it the most efficient that they could make it. Simple as that. Now, once I start out on a journey, my initial crew rating is going to be the crew rating amongst the largest amount amongst my crew. That means the majority of my crew is green. I have a green ship. If the majority of my crew is trained, I have a trained ship. It doesn't matter if I have one or two green folks or a couple of average folks. If the majority of something is that's what it is. Now, this is only the initial part when I'm starting my journey. As I go on, people become more trained. A green sailor will become average after a month. Now, this is an actual month out in space. This isn't in ports. This isn't at rest. This isn't doing stuff on various lands that we might stop at or land at. This is an actual month out in space traveling around. An average one will become trained after 2 months. Now, this must include at least one trip into the Phlogiston. Phlogiston is a scary, kind of mythological place. It fills you with terror, and so they need to at least have experienced it once in order to get this level, to become trained, to have experienced the actual experience of heading into the Phlogiston. It's important that they do this, or they're not going to be at this level. A trained crew member will become crack after 3 months. Now, this does, of course, include, you have to have that trip to the Phlogiston, but you also have to have at least one space battle, one battle with another ship, in order to gain that crack status. So if you've met those two things with a trained, trip to Phlogiston, space battle with another ship, they become crack. Now, it is also possible to lose a status once I've gained it. The fact is, you could lose crewmates, replace them, but it is fairly easy to keep your normal status. I'll explain why. As long as you have 20% of the original crew, you retain your status. That means if I have a trained crew, 20% of it's still alive, I have to go to a port and replace it with all green folks, I'm still trained. Why is this? Because those trained individuals, those gruff and hardened individuals that have been aboard my ship, can show the newcomers what's going on. They've been aboard the ship long enough to know what's what, and so once the new crew comes in, they can show them the ropes, get them started quicker and more efficiently. Of course, those actual crew status won't change unless we have the time changing, and you could technically lose off more of the original crew and have things still change in the next time you dock, but you have an opportunity to keep with the status of the crew you have. The exception to this is crack. If you lose 50% of your crew under crack, go under that 50% mark, you're down to trained. You need at least 50% of the original crew to keep a ship under the crack status once you've reached it. Of course, after the appropriate amount of time, you can regain it. Now, a crew itself has little effect on things like your maneuverability, your speed of your ship. The important thing that it really does alters your initiative. The better the crew, the more bonus you have to your initiative. Also, they fire the weapons of your ship, so a crew is very important to keep the weapons going, and on that end for combat, whatever your level of crew is affects their overall morale. The better the crew, the more morale they have when it comes to staying in a combat and staying in a fight. But that's it for today. So, I finished talking about a few more modifications for your ship. Anchors and tethers, which are really important, and lifeboats, boats, which might be important. It might save your life if you have one that you can jettison yourself from. Of course, having enough for the entire crew is hard to do unless you're using the collapsible ones, and then, well, it takes time to open them up, and, well, time might not be what you have when things are going really south for your ship. Trade-off. Then I talked about crew. This is beyond your captain, beyond the helmsman, the rest of the crew you have, the types of crew there are, and what it means to be one of these types of crew, to change in between them, to get training, and what it means for your ship to have this type of crew to it. In the next episode, we're going to talk about weapon teams, because we did mention a little bit that the crew will be manning weapons, and then we're going to talk about long-distance movement aboard your Spelljammer. Traveling great distances, because you will be when traveling through space. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows you for the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. There's some great rewards there. Helps to grow and improve the channel and the empire. Regardless. Until the next time, I bid you farewell.